Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
from sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome everyone to this episode of Recover You. Today is a solo episode with me, Kylene, and today we're going to talk about conquering intrusive thoughts and navigating triggers after betrayal and infidelity. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here today. So I had a question in the Recover You Facebook group about what do I do with these intrusive thoughts? I'm rewording the question. We're doing really well. There's been a lot of progress in recovery, but I still have these intrusive thoughts and these triggers. So what do I do about that? So I answered the question in the group, but I thought, this is such a common question that every betrayed partner is going to navigate at some point or other, whether it's the first 6 months of recovery or 3 years into recovery. So I thought this would be a good topic to dive a little bit more deeply into with a podcast episode. So here we are. So I thought I would just start with, first of all, we have an episode on intrusive thoughts by Lily Sace. That's episode 58. So it was a long time ago, but it is an excellent episode. So I would recommend, if this is something that you struggle with, having, images pop up or recurring triggers a lot, and just if the term intrusive thought resonates with you, I would definitely check out that episode. It's episode 58. I kind of want to talk a little bit about, what are intrusive thoughts and what are triggers relating to betrayal, and are they the same thing? So some people might actually say, yeah, they're the same thing, because basically an intrusive thought is unwanted, right? We don't ask for them. So the idea of a trigger, the idea of an intrusive thought, they can feel very similar. The thing that I think I would differentiate them a little bit, partially from my own experience, but also partially from just really deeply understanding trauma and the experience that a betrayed partner goes through after discovery. It is a little bit different. And I'll just share my personal experience. I've mentioned, with intrusive thoughts previously, they kind of just came out of nowhere for me. I could sit here and do a different episode on analyzing why I thought they were there and where they came from and things like that. But the first time that I experienced a big bout of them, it felt very random. And so they were images in my mind, they were intrusive, they were unwanted, and the way my brain works, it ruminated on it. But really, that's the way a lot of brains work, because if you have something that pops into your mind that's really scary or that feels threatening in some way, if we have a story attached to that or we assign meaning to it, then our brain is going to ruminate on it. It's going to repeat the thought. It's going to bring it back. And the brain does this for a lot of reasons. And we're going to talk about how it's trying to protect you later. But that's kind of the idea of an intrusive thought. So an example of that might be, hey, I am driving down the road and maybe I'm driving down the side of a mountain. And some of those mountains that you drive up or down, depending on where you are in the country, sometimes the roads are really narrow and there's not a big safety wall next to you or anything like that. And so, you can just kind of see off the side of the mountain, right? And you're pretty high up. So an intrusive thought would be, I'm driving down the side of a mountain. It's kind of that scenario. And then I look to the right and I think, what if I just drove off the mountain, right? Okay, that's an intrusive thought. Or I'm in the kitchen and I'm holding a knife and my partner's 3 feet away and an intrusive thought pops in and goes, what if I stab my partner, right? These are random thoughts that the brain sort of takes these random pieces of information, pops a sentence, pops a thought, pops a visual into your mind. And it really doesn't mean anything. It's not something you would ever act on. It's not something that's happened in the past. It's just a connection of dots that was formed in a visual or in a sentence or whatever. Now, the reason these become problematic is because if we aren't aware of what they are, the idea of oh my gosh, why did I think about driving off the cliff? Or, oh my gosh, why did I think about stabbing my partner? I'm going to assign meaning to that. There is no meaning to that, but I'm going to assign meaning to it and go, I'm a horrible person because I had this thought. So when we assign meaning to the thought itself, it's more likely to stick around. So again, I would encourage you, if that resonates with you, go to episode 58 and listen to us discuss intrusive thoughts more. But that's the idea of an intrusive thought. And so the takeaway from the idea of intrusive thoughts is they're random. Every brain does it. The brains that the brains where the thoughts stick around and become ruminating thoughts and sticky thoughts are brains that have associated meaning with the thought. And, like I just mentioned, the meaning that I could associate with that is I'm a horrible person for having the thought, or having that thought means that I'm a bad person or must be a bad person. I must be like a psycho, or I must be violent, or I must be immoral, or I must be unethical, or whatever that is, right? Or it could just be a random thought that popped into your brain. Okay, so it's really important to understand that we don't have to assign meaning to those thoughts. Now, here's where I would personally venture away from that concept a little bit with the idea of triggers when it comes to betrayal triggers and betrayal intrusive thoughts. So they would all sort of go under the umbrella of intrusive thought, right? But really the thing to do with intrusive thought is just don't give it meaning, and the less meaning you give it, the more likely it will be to go away and you move on. But that's because safety is actually established, right? So like, I know myself, I know I'm not going to stab anyone. I know that I'm not dangerous, right? We can kind of root back in reality with an intrusive thought. We can root back into, I know myself, I don't have to worry about that. Like, it really is okay, and just take the meaning away from that thought. But with, triggers after betrayal, they are often rooted in some version of reality. So when we have a trigger or an intrusive thought, a lot of times it is very specific to the trauma that we've actually experienced. So for example, you're hugging your partner and all of a sudden you have a trigger where you have an image of your spouse hugging the affair partner, or maybe an image pops up of him acting out to pornography, or something that's very specific to something that has actually happened. Now, with a little caveat there, some of these intrusive thoughts and triggers may be made up visuals that we as betrayed partners, our brains will fill in the gaps. So for example, I never saw the type of pornography that my husband looked at. We had so many conversations around this information that I ended up having a lot of sexualized images in my mind that were rooted in reality, but they were really a reflection of my perception of that world. They weren't actually an image that I had seen, for example. So they could be either one. The images that our brain creates to understand and to create a picture of what is happening, or for some people, as they go through discovery and as they find out this information, they have actual images, actual memories. It doesn't really matter which one it is, but this is sort of the idea here of this is a trigger. This is what, we would term as an intrusive thought for betrayed partner, but I would use the word trigger here. So there's definitely an overlap, as you can see, between the two. Some people may not differentiate at all. I do, just because I've had experience with both, and I personally feel like they were very, very different experiences for me. Again, one sort of being random and not rooted in reality, the other being very directly correlated to these painful experiences that we have had, an actual fear that is reasonable to an extent because it's something that has happened in our life, right? So I think the emotional triggers and the visual triggers after betrayal, those are more closely associated maybe with the idea of PTSD, right? It's a combination of images or physiological responses that is a trauma response to something that has actually happened in your life. Okay, so that's sort of what we're talking about today. So probably every one of you listening, if you're a betrayed partner, can relate to some extent. Now, I would actually even though this particular episode is geared towards betrayed partners, if you are listening and you are the addict partner or the betrayer partner, you probably relate to some of this too, right? There were probably sexualized images that just pop into your head and you're like, I don't want these things. So maybe some of this is going to relate to you as well. Keep listening. And again, too, I would also recommend that episode specifically on intrusive thoughts if you still struggle with those things, because I think that is something that we can all pull into our recovery, is understanding these variations and how do we handle them. So let's talk about some common triggers, just to reiterate for betrayed partners, if you're listening, that this is what we're talking about. So some common things that you might experience after discovery that would be, intrusive thoughts or a physiological response or some sort of emotional trigger would be things like, I feel uncomfortable with physical intimacy. Or I think I'm comfortable, but when we begin to get intimate, I feel very emotional, or my anxiety rises, or maybe I just start crying in the middle of it. I have images of the pornography or the affair partners. Those just pop into my head. So another trigger would be any perceived secrecy or lack of being forthcoming or honest upfront from the person who had done the behavior, the acting out, or the betrayal. Certain words or phrases that take you back to an argument, or that take you back to the acting out, or take you back to the betrayal, or take you back to something you found. So certain words or phrases can certainly be triggers. Locations, dates, songs associated with discovery or with acting out behavior. So again, you're seeing a pattern here. This is a trauma response, and it's rooted in reality, something that has happened, whether it is the way our brain fills in the gaps, or it's an actual memory, or something very, very specifically related to an experience that we had. Forms of media, so things like TV, movies, Broadway shows or musicals, all of these things, or books even, all these things that can have a storyline or an image or something that triggers our mind to something parallel, mirroring, or something similar to the betrayal experience, something our partner did, or one of our fears associated with that experience. So I think we've shared this. We watched the show Monk. So after discovery, there were a lot of TV shows that we were just trying to be super, 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 super careful about, making sure they didn't have any sexual content, and just making sure they were really clean so that we could maybe enjoy something together that wouldn't be triggering for either one of us. And one of those shows was Monk, the OCD detective. And by the way, that's an amazing series. Absolutely love it. It's just so good on so many levels. But even with that being such a clean show, there were 2 or 3 episodes where it was either something that was just flat out inappropriate, or just it was something that maybe normally wouldn't have triggered me, but because of a specific detail in Patrick's story, or a specific detail that I had heard that triggered me, or something that he had done, those things in those episodes would activate me and really make me uncomfortable. And so one of those examples, I won't go into details. I'll sort of just leave that open to relating to all of you, because you've probably all experienced that. You might hear a song on the radio, and maybe that was the song that was considered quote unquote your song, that or maybe it was your wedding song, or there's a lot of different things that can fall into this category. So media, TV, movies, music. Another big trigger is forms of comparison. So body image insecurities, whether we are imagining the images, like I said, or we have, or even if we're not comparing directly, like we don't have an image or we haven't seen anything, but even if just the experience of knowing that our partner was looking at other bodies, if we have insecurities with our own body, a lot of that can be triggering, and we can struggle with a lot of comparison wounds. So now we know sort of what we're talking about: intrusive thoughts, emotional triggers. Now we've also sort of discussed what are some really, really common triggers for betrayed partners. What the heck do we do about them? We know that this is a trauma response. We know that everyone is going to experience these. And so that's one thing I just want to start with, is normalizing this experience for you, so that you don't feel like you're doing anything wrong if you're struggling with some of these things. It's very, 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 very normal. Again, it's a trauma response. Your body is going to be really trying to protect you through this. And one of the super annoying ways it does this is by showing us anything that might be dangerous. So what do we do to actually deal with triggers and intrusive thoughts and recurring ruminations and things that we can't let go of, and et cetera, et cetera? Well, the number one thing, and you're going to get so tired of me saying this, I bet you can all guess, is safety. I know everyone listening to this podcast right now just yelled it in their car, said it while they were doing laundry. I know you knew that I was going to say the word safety, but let me explain why this is so important in this particular situation. Your brain's primary goal is to keep you safe. So it is scanning for danger and it is looking actively for safety. So I can't really overstate this enough. When we want to get better, when we want to heal, safety has to be created. We cannot patchwork this system. We can't override the actual safety. It's like we can't, in this situation, we cannot put a Band-Aid on a gushing wound. It's just, we can try, and many people I'm sure have experienced this, but it fails because our brain and our nervous system will always know if we are actually safe. It is so energetically intelligent and it's so attuned to being able to feel what is actually safe so I can relax. And so when we don't create safety in our relationship and in our home and in our body and in our mind as we go through recovery, we can't oversupplement this, we can't outrun this, we can't therapize our experience here. Safety has to be present. Whether we are in the relationship with our partner or whether we have separated, we've just got to create that safety. But the issue comes in for many partners, or where the issue comes in for many partners is when we are staying together and we're trying desperately to heal, but the addict partner isn't helping with that safety creation. And that's where I see a lot of partners get stuck. And there's a really good reason for that, because if we can't achieve actual safety, all the modalities that we try to use will only get so far. So we really absolutely have to create safety in our lives, whether that means physical separation, whether that means divorce, or whether that means the addict getting into real sobriety, expressing empathy, taking responsibility, and then creating safety with us in the relationship. So what does safety look like in terms of taking action and things we can do? We just recorded an episode around this, episode 121. We recorded 5 practical ways to create safety after discovery. So definitely go check that out if you haven't listened. And I'll include these episode links in the show notes as well. But in a very generalized capacity, a betrayed partner trying to create safety for herself after discovery is going to be someone that is setting boundaries, that is communicating, hey, this is what I can tolerate or not tolerate in our relationship moving forward. This is what's required long-term to be in relationship with me. And this is what I need to feel safe moving forward. And then being willing to change our behavior as the betrayed partner if those boundaries are not respected. So again, whether that means sleeping apart or having a physical separation or, whatever it is in terms of those boundaries, if they're not being respected, a boundary means that we then change our behavior. And the reason that we would do that is to create the safety. If we know that we need XYZ to be safe and to heal, and we set a boundary around that and then it's overstepped, we're just stepping into safety by taking the action associated with it, whether that be emotional distance, physical distance, whatever that is. So what are some... Oh, sorry, I'm going to go right back. I'm looking at my notes and I skipped ahead a little bit. So setting boundaries are some of the ways that a betrayed partner is going to begin working through establishing safety. And some other steps, though, that we're going to be actively engaging in is connecting to a coach, connecting to a therapist. It's really important that we find people to share our story with. The more we can speak out loud what is happening, the more shame is going to die about what we're experiencing. And I'm sure all of you listening understand what I'm saying when I say a betrayed partner also feels shame, because we didn't choose this. We didn't engage in the acting out behavior. It was thrust upon us. But in the beginning, while we're getting used to saying this out loud, it feels very embarrassing. It feels very shameful. It feels very overwhelming. So the more we can talk to people, the more we can connect with people and speak our truth and share how this feels and what's happening in our life, safe people, support groups or friends that are not going to judge, or family members that are going to support us through the process, or a therapist or coach that's going to be able to help us navigate. The more we can speak things out loud, the more shame is going to diminish in our life. And that can just be so helpful for creating safety, because again, the less shame we feel, the less fear we feel, the more freedom and choice come in. And it's from that place that we can make good decisions. So when we're thinking about safety, what does it feel like? When do I know that I'm experiencing safety? You have space to feel your emotions, right? So maybe that means that you've set a physical space boundary and you guys are sleeping in different rooms, and you know that if you go in your bedroom, you have space to cry, you have space to journal, you have space to feel your emotions. Maybe you don't need a physical separation. Maybe your partner is really participating in the process, and they give you the space to feel your emotions with them, and maybe you guys kind of navigate that together. You're able to have healthy outlets, like I just mentioned, friends, family, coaches, therapists, where you feel free to be yourself and to be seen in your emotions and your pain and what you're experiencing in life. You can communicate your boundaries and your needs without fear of repercussion. You don't have to worry too much about, did I phrase this the right way? Should I say this? Should I not say this? You're able to express yourself freely. You can sleep through the night. You're able to get a good night's sleep, even though you're feeling anxiety and you're not through this yet. You're able to get some sleep. That's a good sign that your body is beginning to feel safe. Your partner is respecting your boundaries. That creates a lot of safety. And the addict partner is quickly moving towards or is already in complete sobriety. So that is going to, if you're staying together, that is going to be like a big foundation that creates safety in your relationship. So navigating triggers, navigating intrusive thoughts. What the heck are we talking about? I just went on this long rant about safety, right? Why? Because we have to have that stabilized. We have to be able to feel safe in order for everything else that we're talking about today to have any impact. Because again, if we don't have this foundation, we can, it's like, I'm going to go to the gym 45 minutes a day. I'm going to lift heavy weights. I'm going to do every single thing right in the gym, but everything else I eat at home is like Coke and ice cream, and I don't eat any protein, and I eat donuts all day, and I chew on sugary candy, and like that's all I put into my body. That's what it's like trying to create or trying to heal from trauma without actual safety as the foundation. We have to have both. We can engage in every single modality that helps our brain, that helps our nervous system. We can do every single thing in that area, but if safety does not exist, we're only going to go so far. So with the gym example, we might gain some muscle, or maybe we'll gain some cardiovascular stamina, but we're not going to build muscle, right? We're not going to make progress. We're not going to make gains. We're not going to, and then we're probably going to have health issues because the nutrition we're putting in our body isn't really that healthy. So it only goes so far if we're not doing these things together. So that's why I emphasize it so frequently and so strongly. It's really, really, really important that we don't override that step. So when we're talking about how do we actually then deal with these intrusive thoughts, assuming safety is established, which for many of you it is, you have partners that are getting into sobriety, that are doing the work, that want to empathize with you, that are respecting your boundaries, all this stuff has this foundation has been laid, and that's amazing. Then what are we going to do about these stupid, annoying, triggering, upsetting, recurring, obsessive thoughts that we have? This is where I really believe in subconscious processing modalities. So I'm actually going to I pulled up a definition on AI because I was like, I talk about I call it subconscious reprocessing. I call it emotional processing, trauma recovery, these sorts of things. And I was like, I want to make sure that I am communicating in a way that I'm not constantly using the same terminology. But that terminology is so ingrained in my brain that that's what I use. So I pulled it up in AI and I said, please explain this in an easy way to understand. And I asked it to explain trauma processing and subconscious processing, because I really want to make sure that in these episodes, I'm communicating the benefit, the why do we do this and why does it work? So AI is great. This is what it told me. Trauma processing. Think of trauma as a heavy backpack full of painful memories or feelings that you carry around. Sometimes your mind buries these feelings to protect you. But they can still cause stress, anxiety, or sudden reactions without you knowing why. Trauma processing is like carefully unpacking that backpack with a guide, like a therapist, and I'm going to say, or a coach. It helps you look at those memories or emotions bit by bit in a safe way so they don't feel as overwhelming. By doing this, you learn to understand the pain, make peace with it, and let go of some of its control over your thoughts and reactions. I'm going to highlight that part. It can let go of some of its control over your thoughts and reactions. That's the big thing that we're all looking for, right? It's like cleaning out a messy closet. You sort through the clutter, keep what's important, and let go of what's weighing you down. Love that. Totally agree with all of it. Subconscious processing. This is what I love. AI says your subconscious is like the backstage of a theater. It's where your thoughts, beliefs, or feelings you're not fully aware of shape how you act or feel. For example, you might feel anxious in a certain situation without knowing why, because your subconscious is holding on to an old fear or belief. Subconscious processing is like shining a light backstage to see what's going on. It helps you uncover those hidden thoughts or patterns, understand where they come from, and reframe them so they don't keep tripping you up. I'm going to repeat that part too, because that's the important part. So they don't keep tripping you up. It's not just about this like, okay, now I'm aware. It's what do we do about it so that these patterns can actually change, so that the outcomes for us can actually change. So in this particular episode that we're talking about, our ruminating thoughts can calm down. We can break the obsessive pattern. It's like updating the software in your brain to run more smoothly. Why it helps. Again, this is a paragraph from AI. Why it helps. Both kinds of processing help you to make sense of emotions or memories that feel stuck or out of control. They let you work through pain at your own pace, reduce its grip on your daily life, and build healthier ways to cope. It's not about erasing the past, but about teaching your mind and body to feel safer and stronger when facing it. Love that. Love, love, love it. So hopefully that was a good explanation that resonates with you. All right, so subconscious processing, this is what we actually do about these recurring thoughts and these triggers. So because they're rooted in a form of reality, a lot of times we might have a combination of a visual or a memory and a physiological response like anxiety, nervous system activation, anger, grief, sadness, etc. Sort of a physical sensation overload of some sort, along with maybe a visual or a memory. So things when you are working with a therapist and you're in the therapeutic world, there are some words that you're going to look for subconscious processing or trauma modalities or emotional processing modalities. And those are things like EMDR, brain spotting, art therapy, trauma therapy, etc. Those are some of the key words that you're going to want to look for, that the practitioner that you're working with is going to have some way to help your brain process this information. So again, we want the external safety to be created, but then we use the subconscious processing modalities to help our brain connect the dots, understand what's happening, and calm down. So it's actually quite effective. A lot of people really like to use somatic work as well. So this is nervous system support, nervous system work. And again, we want the external safety to be there, because when our brain and our nervous system are trying to calm down, they will essentially refuse if the environment is actually unsafe, or they will tap into safety, but it will only be temporary. So there's benefit to that, right? The more we can get our nervous system into a place of calm, the more frequently we can do it. There's benefit to that, even if it has to be activated again because the environment isn't perfect right now. But over time, we want both to be in alignment. I am actually safe in my environment, and my nervous system now believes that I am safe in my environment. So we want both of those things. So the things I use in my practice, they have different names like quantum time technique, timeline therapy, parts work, and a combination of things like emotional processing and visualizing techniques to help clients. But what I thought I would do is just give you a couple examples of what this looks like in the real world. So I was working with a client who had a really emotional response to a specific date. It was a traumatic date that was difficult for her to navigate every year. And so what I did is in our coaching sessions, I learned what she was feeling, why she was feeling that way. I understood her and her history and her thought process around this date. And then we were able to do a subconscious processing exercise that included a powerful visualization. And in this visualization and this experience, her subconscious had the opportunity to fully express itself emotionally. And the process that we went through allowed her to actually experience closure around this painful experience. And it was so beautiful. And it was such a tremendous emotional release for her. It was an absolutely incredible experience. So it wasn't long after we did that exercise that she reached out to me and told me how healing it was for her and how smoothly she was able to navigate that day for the first time since the traumatic experience. So that's one example of how powerful this can be. She knew because of the patterning and the history that this was going to be a hard day. So leading up to it, she brought it to me as something like, hey, can we work on this? We were able to go through this process together, and it made her ability to navigate that so much easier. So that was a big deal. Another client was really struggling to go into a store. And so many of you may experience this, whether it is maybe a location near the affair partner, or maybe it is a location or a store where you might run into somebody. So a lot of this client's fear had to do with the possibility of running into the affair partner. So what we did was we personalized the experience for her to do the processing of the emotions that she needed that was surrounding this. And we really gave her subconscious the opportunity to express itself the way it needed to in order to process this effectively. So once we did the exercise together for her, and again, these are very, very personalized. I hope you're hearing that in these explanations. There are guidelines. There are maybe loose things that might be similar client to client, but so much of what we do is so incredibly personalized because their experience is personalized. And the way I work as a coach too, I blend so many things together because I want it to be personalized to you. So it's not just parts work. It's not just inner child. It's not just this. It's like, what does your brain need in this moment, in this experience that we're having around this thing that we're trying to process that will help it to feel safe? And we pull whatever we need to pull to help it process that thing. So in this particular situation, we were able to navigate the emotions around this experience. And I was able to hear from her after this exercise that she was able to successfully navigate shopping in that store again. That's a huge deal because trauma sometimes takes away these normal life experiences for us, right? Something that's as normal as going to Walmart or going to Kroger or going to the gas station or whatever it is can now activate our nervous system tremendously. So subconscious work is really where we get to reclaim these normal things in life and take our empowerment back. Like, I get to go into the store, I get to live my life, and my nervous system is no longer reacting from this place of fear and defensiveness because there's probably a lot of safety in this experience. And if there's not, we can work around, hey, what happens if something quote unquote bad does happen? What happens if something scary does happen? We can navigate that in the moment. But can we heal the brain and the nervous system enough? Can we work through our trauma and our triggers enough so that we can wait until the danger actually presents itself to respond to it? So that's where we were able to get her brain to process this experience enough that she was able to go back to the store. So that was pretty cool too. I've also done parts work where I had the part of anxiety. I labeled it as like a part. I had anxiety talk to the other logical part, the brain, and they had a long conversation together as we hashed out what anxiety needed to feel safe, asking if it could trust the brain, thanking anxiety for protecting my client, and then ultimately asking if they could work together and if anxiety felt safe enough to go to sleep until it's really needed. So trying to get anxiety not to run the show. So if you've ever seen the Pixar movie about parts work, why is that running out of my brain right now? Anyway, they have all the emotions and they're running the console in the little girl's brain. And that's what we were trying to do, is try to get anxiety not to run the console, but could her brain run the console? So it's like more of the logical awareness of, hey, I'm safe, right? Just as an example, but anxiety needed to agree with that. So we took her through a process that's, can we get your anxiety part to agree? Can we get it more in alignment with the rest of the parts so it doesn't always have to run the show? So when we do subconscious processing modalities and when safety is created in our environment and in our relationship, intrusive thoughts and ruminating thoughts and images that pop up and all of these things can begin to calm down. So another thing that I would encourage is around this topic is to really do the work with your practitioner to identify the core wounds that are being activated. When we have recurring triggers, things that stick around. So I'm not talking necessarily about the first couple months, because when I received all of the information, asked all the questions, it was like a fire hose of information. And that put so many images in my mind. It would just flooded my system, flooded my brain. I had so much anxiety. Everything was activated. Everything was on fire. So that is just, for me, was part of that initial shock, right? So the things that come up in that moment are not exactly the things that will stick around. The things that are going to stick around, the triggers or the activation or the images that pop up or the pain that pops up 6 months down the road, 9 months down the road, a year down the road, those filter out down to the things that are connected to core wounds. So that's where working with your practitioner over time to identify, hey, this is coming up. Let's dig into it. What's the core wound underneath? When we then work on addressing the core wound, we're going to have so much more, we're going to be so much more effective in actually calming down the mind or processing this pain. So I'm just going to give an example, right? So let's say, because this is really common, that the thing that is bothering us is like an image of the pornography or an image of the woman, right? And so we're able to sort of go, okay, I think it's a comparison wound, right? So that might sound, hey, I've gone deeply enough, but this is where doing some of the work with someone that can help you dig so many levels deeper than that can be really helpful, because comparison sounds like we've identified the wound, but there might be something even deeper than that. And so I'm just going to walk you really quickly through if we were doing this and we were going, what's deeper than that? And then answering the question and then going, what's deeper than that? And then answering the question and saying, what's deeper than that? And we went through a pattern like that. It might look something like this. So I have this image. What's deeper than that? Well, I think it's a comparison wound. Well, what's deeper than that? Or I would say, what's underneath that? Let's put it that way. What's underneath that? Well, I think she's prettier than me. Well, what's underneath that? Well, I don't feel pretty. Well, what's underneath that? Well, I'm really insecure about my stomach. I really don't think it's flat enough. Well, what's underneath not feeling like your stomach is flat enough? Well, I don't feel like I'm good enough or that my body is good enough. Okay, well, what do you think is underneath that? Well, if I don't look a certain way, no one will love me. Okay, well, what do you think might be underneath that? Well, I just don't think I'm lovable the way I am. So do you see how we started out with one word saying comparison, and we were able to get down to this nervous system core wound, this deep belief that says, I am not lovable the way I am. Something has to change about me in order to be lovable. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about core wounds, when we're talking about limiting belief work. So when I work with my clients and we're doing limiting belief work, we're trying to get all the way down to that level of what is it that I believe that when I say that sentence, my nervous system responds. Even if I logically know that that's not true, I may logically believe that I'm a valuable human being. But if I say that sentence and my nervous system really resonates with that, and I'm engaging in patterns or I have triggers that reflect that I feel really, really insecure, then those are all ways that we know, hey, this is something that we need to address. So when we do limiting belief work, we don't just want to stop at, okay, I recognized the belief. We want to actually identify, what do we want to believe instead? So sometimes understanding the belief is enough. Sometimes when we bring it into our awareness, we can go, oh, well, now that I know that, I can work against, or I can work towards not thinking that, and I can practice different behaviors. But more often, we're talking about these beliefs being so deeply rooted that we actually need things like the subconscious work and these exercises to be able to move the needle in changing our patterns and changing our beliefs. So what some of this looks like, I'll just give you an example of like limiting beliefs and new beliefs that may resonate with you. So we would take a belief that sounds like life should be a certain way, and when it's not, it means I'm failing and not living into my purpose. So that, a lot that would be around a lot of perfectionism, high expectations, self-critical, that sort of thing. A belief can come out of those things that sounds like life should be a certain way, and when it's not, it means I'm failing and not living into my purpose. Okay. So what would we want to replace that with? Again, these are all going to be super personalized to every individual, but an example would be, I don't have to suffer to make a difference. It's okay for me to enjoy life while I impact the world. Okay, I'm going to give you another example. A limiting belief would sound like, speaking up means I'm overreacting, too sensitive, and melodramatic. So this would be a belief around the ability to use our voice, right? And a lot of us have those beliefs. A lot of us grew up not learning how to set boundaries, not learning how to speak up for ourselves, not learning how to use our voice. And so we have fears around that, or we have fear around conflict that then keeps us from using our voice, right? So that can show up with things like a belief that says, speaking up means I'm overreacting, too sensitive, and melodramatic. So a belief that we may replace with that might look something like, speaking up means I am safer and a more authentic person. Speaking up is trustworthy. So the new beliefs are beliefs that we want to step into. The new beliefs are beliefs that we want to actually live into. And so in the exercises that we do, we work with your subconscious through a process where it releases the limiting belief, and we continue to work until it can accept this new belief. And so it's really working on that subconscious level that's so transformative. I'll leave you with one more example. There may be a belief that says something like, I have to meet other people's needs in order for them to love me. So people pleasing is a common thing that we see, right? Or outer focus and inner focusing is selfish, that sort of thing. So that may manifest in things like, I have to meet other people's needs in order for them to love me. Again, that's a belief of not enoughness. If I don't do X, Y, Z, like I'm not enough, right? That's another way to word something like that. So the new belief may be something to the effect of, being myself and meeting my needs is good, and I deserve to be loved, flaws and all. Those are the kind of beliefs we want to live into. And what I just find so absolutely transformational is the subconscious work, because it helps our brains get there, and it helps our brains and our nervous system align with these belief systems so that we can actually begin practicing living into those things. So when we logically know something, but we continue to live in patterns that counteract that, or we continue to have these activated wounds or insecurities, then that's when we know that subconscious work can be really, 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 really helpful. So that's what I have for you today in terms of what are the things that we can do to conquer intrusive thoughts and that will support us in navigating triggers. We've got to create safety. Safety is number one. It's very incredibly helpful to engage in subconscious processing modalities, EMDR, QTT work, all these different things, whether it's coaching or therapy. Different practitioners are going to do different things, but if they work in the subconscious, on the subconscious realm where the emotions and the trauma are stored, I feel like that ends up moving the needle so much more than just logically thinking through things. At least that's been my experience personally and as a coach. And then the third thing is really doing the work to identify the core wounds that are being activated. So when I have these thoughts, when I have these triggers, when I have this rumination, what is the actual core wound that it is bringing to the surface for me? And when we can do that work and we have the tools and we work with our practitioners to dig those 5-10 layers deeper to the actual core wound, the wound that resides in our soul, the fear or the insecurity that actually is speaking through our nervous system when these images pop in, When we can heal that, these images and these triggers and these wounds begin to calm down. And so that's why I find that this is so incredibly important. When we have safety, when we do work in the subconscious where all of these things are floating around and are stored, it just helps organize that system more effectively. And when we can heal the core wounds, then we're able to move on and we're able to say, hey, this has been addressed already. And my body just feels safer. My brain just feels safer. And so when your brain feels safe, it no longer has the need to pop these things up. So the safer we feel over time as our partner is healing and doing the work, the more they provide empathy, the more they work with us and have conversations with us and demonstrate that they understand the impact of their behavior and how it has made us feel and what we are experiencing. And the more we can really process our own pain and the more time progresses with all of these elements being part of the ingredients that make up recovery, the less and less and less we will experience the triggers. And the more we will experience if a thought pops up that we do nothing about it. Or if we have a trigger or we feel emotionally activated or our nervous system feels a little activated or anxious or anger or sad or whatever, those not only become further apart, but they feel smaller and smaller and smaller in terms of the impact that they have in the moment. So a lot of the times when I have a question for Patrick now, or I have a thought, or I have a memory, or I have an emotion pop up, it's usually like if I have a question, for example, it's usually with no nervous system reaction behind it at all. I can ask Patrick a question and there's no activation in my body at all anymore. That's generally how that goes. If I have a thought pop up, normally there's not a lot of activation associated with that. Every once in a while, I'll have some emotions pop up that include grief or sadness or reflection. And I'm able to move through that. So just as an example of how some of this can look over time as more and more safety is created and more of the emotional processing is done on that deep level, it just is so much more manageable than when I was in, year one, for example, where everything felt volcanic, really. Well, I hope that is helpful. I would also say just a little add on to this, that if your partner is someone that is working in getting into recovery and they are working through the process, bring them into this process. Make sure you're communicating your triggers. Make sure you are asking for them to support you. And again, this is if they are doing the work, if they can receive this and if they can support you. So in that situation, it can be really helpful because the person that hurt you should be the person that helps you heal the most if they're willing to do the work. I understand that in some situations that is not possible because either they have not done enough healing work themselves or they just simply don't want to. They don't want to take responsibility. They don't want to acknowledge. And that's not what we're talking about here. I don't encourage you to keep emotionally leaning into that if you're not getting the safety that you need. But when you have a partner that's doing the work, that's practicing empathy, that's trying, bringing them in can be very healing to this because since they are the ones that engaged in the behaviors that triggered the intrusive thoughts, them sitting with you through your pain can also be tremendously healing if they do enough healing work on their own that they have the capacity to do that. It can be really, really helpful. All right. Every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. So make that choice today and we will see you next week.
Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.